Elliot Clough and Sean Bach here for your second Swarmcast of the day here on this Wednesday. Bye week for Iowa football, and of course, a big day for Iowa women's basketball. McKenna Velitsko, am I pronouncing that right, Sean?
Sounds about right.
Okay, all right. I'll take your word for it. Commits to Iowa, top 10 recruit in the country, 5-star prospect. I obviously don't know much about her. We have a full video from David Eichholt, who posted that earlier today regarding the commitment to the Iowa basketball program. You can check that out here on our YouTube channel, on all podcasting platforms as well, if you want an in-depth analysis of her decision, plus ton of content for VIPs and free content there at HawkeyeInsider.com from David, and of course our Dushan Landon, who does national work covering women's basketball recruiting. So Sean, like I said, I don't know much. This is not my beat, but and I know it's not necessarily your beat either, but you've got a little bit more information on McKenna and her fit. And like I said, if you want an in-depth reaction, go ahead and check Dave's content out. But Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely a big recruiting win for this Iowa staff. I think this cycle, especially, there were a couple of prospects that the Iowa staff missed out on. Still in on a number of pretty highly touted ones, but there were some that the Iowa staff missed out on. And I think a lot of people were really curious to see how Jan Jensen could recruit as a head coach. I mean, yes, they were able to secure Eddie Deal, but that was a big-time Lisa Bluter. Like, Lisa Bluter was the head coach at the time of Deal's commitment. And now you get someone like Velitsko, who is a top 10, top 5 recruit, depending on where you kind of look at it. I think some people consider her top 5, top 3 prospect in the country, and you beat out some pretty good programs too. I mean, we all know what South Carolina has been the last couple of years. USC has really been on the rise as well with Juju Watkins. Ohio State is always consistently at the top of the Big Ten. So it's a really big commitment in that regard. But also you look at this Iowa roster, you have a lot of like really good returning pieces. But that 4 position, losing Hannah Stolke is going to be, you have to find a way to replace her. And I think Velitsko is the perfect fit. I think she's a little more skilled than Stolke was at this stage. And still, like, I think Stolke is obviously more of an interior kind of threat. Velitsko can offer that as well with her rebounding ability, but she can also kind of play a 3-4 hybrid and be pretty good on the perimeter as well as an improving 3-point shooter, good with the ball in her hands. Just a lot of, versatility to bring to the table, and she'll be a really nice fit for Jan Jensen. Probably has potential to start right away for Iowa next year, depending on what the rotation looks like, who leaves, who doesn't leave. Usually this team is pretty good at keeping girls in the program, and you don't always, it's not really a mass or an exodus of players leaving the program in the transfer portal. So I think Velitsko will be a really nice fit, and I think it's also pretty appealing to some of the other highly sought after prospects that Iowa is in on.
To give you a frame of reference of how little I know on women's basketball recruiting, in the press box this weekend, I asked Dave, so would they take Addison Bjorn if Velitsko commits? And he goes, yeah. So dumb question by me. And she officially visited this last weekend, right?
Yeah, she was on campus this past weekend. She has like a top 7 or something like that. I'm not super plugged into it as well, but I kind of am familiar with it. But I think UConn's kind of the one that a lot of people are chasing there.
Right. Velitsko,
but I was in the mix and getting an official visit. So
right. Velitsko will have a lot of power in terms of being able to draw other top recruits and other recruits in general to Iowa when you get that type of star power. So definitely something to continue to follow. Of course, Iowa had its wins in the transfer portal this offseason, and they'll be looking back there again here at the end of this coming season, looking towards 26. But that's pretty much it for women's hoops from Sean and I. Go check out Dave's content. We got a ton at Hawkeye Insider right now. And we're going to have more men's basketball content from me later today. So stay tuned for that. But right now we're going to dive into football. Obviously, coming out of the coordinator's presser yesterday, we basically learned absolutely nothing about Mark Gronowski and his health status. It's preparation time for Hank Brown and Jeremy Hecklinski. I mean, we were talking before we started recording, Sean, and you and I are basically just as much in the dark as everybody else. It's a weird situation to follow. It's obviously different than the last quarterback who had health issues. but I don't know. Maybe how are you feeling right now? What's your gut telling you regarding Mark and his ability to come back, if that's a possibility this coming weekend not this coming weekend, but the following weekend at Wisconsin and beyond?
Yeah, I've tried to have conversations with people. Sources are being pretty, and people in the know are being pretty coy about it, I would say.
That's the exact word I was going to say. Let's
Yeah,
go.
like coy. Coy is the perfect word to describe this situation. Like getting intel on it. What I've been able to gather is Mark wants to play. Like he wants to play. He wants to be out there. Like he wants to return and be back. But how much of that is in his control, out of his control, that's up in the air. I think from my vantage point, I'm not reporting anything. This is kind of just my feel on it. I feel Mark will be back this season, but I really think it's going to be a week by week basis. It's really going to be a determinant of, okay, how's he feeling? How's it this week? Is there improvement? Whatnot. Like if I were a betting man right now, I would say that Hank Brown is the starting quarterback against Wisconsin for Iowa, just based on my feel. I don't know, like even Tim Lester, like the fact that Iowa doesn't want this out thinks to me that it's still fluid. Nothing's really determined. Like it's still up in the air. But I think Mark, like based on other conversations I've had, it feels like Mark's going to be back. It just feels like one of those week to week bases. I do know for certain that he wants to play. He wants to be out there. He wanted to go back against Indiana, but the medical team was, they were like, no, dude, it's not smart. Like he was dying to get back out there. But it's like when you're running that fast and like you have to be able to start stop, like the ability to decelerate, like that could not only aggravate it more, but like that could potentially lead to, parts of the game or like decisions that you can't really control because your body can't move those certain ways and how you want it to move. So I mean, everything on that end, like he wants to play, like whatnot, but it's just a matter of, okay, how much worse can this get if it can get worse? But also, like, I just don't like to me, it feels like a week to week basis. The fact that Tim Lester, like I said, the fact that Tim Lester didn't say anything makes me think either A, it's a fluid situation, week by week basis. Two, the Iowa staff wants like Wisconsin to have to prepare for multiple quarterbacks. And that's really smart. Maybe that's like the two most like optimistic like ways of thinking about it. But that's just kind of how I'm piecing the puzzle together. I'd be a little bit surprised if he's done for the year. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses like one or two games. But then again, that Penn State game or what? Yeah, that's Penn State October 18th, right? Yeah. Like that's a really big game to have him if you can get him there. And I think Hank Brown is going to be fine, but it's not Mark Gronowski right now. So to sum that all up, I would say I think he's back this year. I just don't know when, and I don't think he knows. I don't think Iowa knows. I think it's going to be extremely fluid throughout the year.
I am right there with you on just about everything you just said. The thing that sticks out to me right now is Iowa's obviously going to do the best they can for Mark's health in the short term and in the long term. So if this is a situation where it's like, man, it's even touchy to come back this year, they're obviously going to take into consideration what Mark wants to do, but they're going to roll with their medical staff and what's recommended. My other thought is just don't play him against Wisconsin. Like Wisconsin is bad. Like if anybody who's watched Wisconsin so far this year knows that they are bad. You can beat Wisconsin with Hank Brown, especially if you have your full stable of running backs and your offensive line is at least majority healthy. We don't know Jennings Dunker, obviously missing that last drive. Bo Stevens twists an ankle. So we don't really know the full status of the offensive line, but they get 2 weeks to rehab and come back. So assuming you're able to get one of or both of Jazzy and Patterson and Xavier Williams back, that's going to help a lot. Now you got Nate McNeil with a little bit of game experience too. Maybe get Reese Vanderzee back coming. That would be massive for Hank Brown to get Reese Vanderzee back. That sounds like it's still up in the air right now. But I think the defense is playing well enough and Wisconsin is bad enough that you just say to the team, maybe not publicly, but to the team, we are rolling with Hank next week. I mean, I think that's the only thing that really makes sense right now. There are people clamoring for Jeremy Hecklinski after one showing of Hank Brown and claiming he's awful. It was 2 drives against the number 11 team in the country when he hadn't taken any meaningful snaps since the year prior at Auburn, where he threw 3 interceptions in 1 half against Arkansas. Expecting him to go out there and be sensational is just kind of ridiculous. And expecting Hecklinski to be ready after not getting reps as the 3rd string guy for the last month, 6 weeks is insane. He'll be prepared to be the backup. He's not going to be prepared to be the starter. That's my read of it anyway. Like, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, I know Iowa fans are like have PTSD from quarterbacks and like anytime like a guy sucks, like it's like, okay, we're writing this guy off because, you know, that's just kind of our luck with quarterbacks. But I think with Brown, you said it, it's a nearly impossible situation to step into. Tim Lester said that yesterday. We talked about how like tough it is. Like he mentioned it yesterday, how tough it is to enter a situation in a game like that, especially against Indiana, especially when it's like, you know, the whole script or the whole playbook and like everything that like he kind of practices for Mark, you spend only a minimal amount of time on, you know, the worst case situation scenario, which I mean, now for the bye week works well in Iowa's favor because Hank Brown is, you know, going to be getting a ton of reps. But I think one of like the most important things to remember too is, I mean, ultimately these 2 plays really decided the game, but that interception, like it's amazing how like small of error, like the margin for error, how small it is between wins and losses in football games. Is Sam Phillips bats down that pass like better, gets a better hand on it, that pass isn't intercepted. If Hank Brown just throws a little bit of better screen pass or like, I mean, the pass they threw to Caden Weechin, that was probably a harder pass than the one that he threw to Kamari Moulton that was incomplete. If he just puts a little less air on it, like we're talking, Lester said that's a touchdown. Yeah. The narrative of Hank Brown just completely shifts. Like completely shifts. And I think, I mean, yes, you have to execute on the field. Like obviously this Iowa program is big on practice, like talking about practice and how you perform in practice, because that's the big, like, you know, how else are you going to prove that on the field if you're not playing in games? So the fact that Lester's talked so glowingly about Hank and like how he was kind of pushing Mark like throughout fall camp and like throughout spring, like he has a really good grasp of it. I feel like if you give him a week of preparation or a week and a half, what have you, that's going to set you up so much better with Hank Brown, especially against a team like Wisconsin, that I would feel confident with Hank Brown leading the team going into Wisconsin, going into Madison, especially if you have the running back situation all figured out. I mean, I don't know if we know for sure like who's going to be healthy against Wisconsin. But if you can get those guys back, it's a completely different story. And same thing that Lester mentioned against Indiana. Like it wasn't an excuse at all, but like those guys like Xavier Williams and Jas Patterson are just so much better suited to run against an Indiana defense like that. Because let's be real, they're better at finding the crease in the offensive line and the holes than maybe Kamari Moulton is. I think Moulton had a pretty good game, but man, like the way that Moulton's able to make up for some of his or carries that might be for a loss, and like the fact that he's like 5'9", like I don't know, 195, and he can just kind of bounce off tacklers like he can. Like I think he dances a little too much. But I think his ability to like bounce off tacklers at his size is really impressive. But I think the ability for Patterson and Xavier Williams to kind of just find the hole and like obviously Patterson's like a good like, all right, we're just gonna go. Like I don't know if he's a great change of direction guy, but Xavier Williams I feel like is really good at finding those holes in the offensive line, finding those gaps, finding those crevices, and being able to like kind of move around and like be elusive enough. And just not having those guys was a real killer for the Iowa offense as a whole against Indiana. But yeah, I think with the quarterback situation, like if Mark's not able to go against Wisconsin, I think you're fine riding with Hank. Like I right now, based on everything I've heard, what the coaches have said, I'd have trust in him. Penn State's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he can handle himself against Penn State, but like it's a different story, especially like I think Iowa's defense is good enough to make it a game like they did against Indiana against Penn State, and I think Penn State's way more susceptible into falling into that like Iowa's play style. I just don't know if you like the run game has to be there. Like there's no doubt about that. Just yeah, you have to be able to make plays against in the passing game against Penn State secondary because they've been very, I wouldn't say iffy, but they are iffy in some spots, I think. And their linebackers, maybe that's more Oregon. Their linebackers are a little, suspect. But either way, like Dante Moore was able to figure it out against Penn State. But man, like Dante Moore is probably a contender for the Heisman Trophy. So Hank Brown would be a different story. But I mean, we're focused on Wisconsin in the bye week and all of that. But yeah, that was kind of my spiel there.
Right. And now when we're talking, I think it's a point that you made that I want to reiterate here is the difference in Hank Brown being he's the guy versus he's trash is legitimately a few inches on two separate throws. That throw to Sam Phillips, and both of them were darts. And I think Hank is probably going to have a little bit more touch when playing against Wisconsin because his adrenaline won't be through the freaking roof. You know what I mean? That's going to be a factor. First off, as on that first throw too, was to 5'7" Sam Phillips. If that's Reese Vanderzee, we might be having a different conversation. And obviously the screen pass, which he should have been able to make the throw, but he didn't. He had 300-pound guys chasing him. Again, this is a very difficult situation to throw a young quarterback into, an inexperienced backup quarterback into number 11 team in the country.
I think he's capable though. Sorry, not to interrupt, but I think he's capable though based on that Weechin throw. Like
I agree.
Like that was probably the most impressive throw like of the day. Like obviously Mark had some really nice throws, but I mean that ball to Weechin, like that was a nice toss.
That was gutsy.
Yeah. If that blocker wasn't there, pick six. But still, that was a very throw that like they put a lot of trust into him. Sorry, didn't mean to pull a David on you. Won't interrupt.
No. That's okay. That's a really good point to make. There was something else I was going to add to it, but either way, let's move on to talking a little bit about the defense in this bye week. Are you ready to move on? Maybe not from all three of the older linebackers, but from 1, 2, 3 of them. Are you ready to move on from Jaden Harrell, Carson Shire? I wouldn't move on from Rex Roth at this point in time. I think he's been a lot better than personally I expected. I thought he would be the weak link, but he hasn't been. And I'm not necessarily ready to move on from Shire because the athleticism is there. Not that he's the greatest in terms of decision-making either. But Harrell, between making incorrect reads, I think he gets a step or two ahead of himself and takes himself out of the play. And I've routinely seen that on my rewatches for Monday Morning Quarterback. there are these plays where he is a step in the wrong direction where Jay Higgins would not have been. And I'm not saying he needs to be Jay Higgins, but he's not doing Jay Higgins-esque or Jay Higgins-like things that the middle linebacker of the Iowa defense should do. One thing that we routinely say about this middle linebacker position, the Mike linebacker position, is that the Iowa defense is designed to funnel tackles to that player. And he's not getting those tackles because he's making incorrect reads. He's jumping on fakes. I don't know. I'm not going to say that he's guessing. That was something somebody suggested on our board, but if it's not guessing, it's making incorrect reads, and that is not beneficial for the Iowa defense. But does Jaden Montgomery immediately fix that for you? Because they're just not going to go to the three young guys yet. They're not going to go to Cam Buffington yet. They're just not. They're not in that position to do that. So does Jaden Montgomery fix that problem? All the while being less of an imposing physical specimen at Mike linebacker, who's usually several inches taller than what Jaden Montgomery is. And that hurts your ability to, knock down passes over the middle, stuff like that. Not that Jaden Harrell's been awesome at that either. But does Jaden Montgomery fix that problem?
I think what Jay Higgins was so good at was obviously his instincts. But I think one of the underrated things was just at the point of it, he was able to diagnose the play and not go forward, just kind of observe the play. And if his ability to disengage from blockers too, I think was a really, really good trait with him. And I think he was a lot better at the point of attack than Jaden has been. And I think that's what made, because when Jay was coming up to get you, or if the offensive line was coming up to get you, Jay would give you he would really disengage well, and he'd also kind of hit you right at the point of attack. And I mean, I thought the defensive line, having guys like Logan Lee and Yahweh Black, having those guys up there too, that made a very noticeable difference. I think the interior play of the defensive line has gotten better, but I think the line, having those guys makes a big difference. Having guys like Jay Higgins, because of their ability to disengage and their ability to, not fall into the trap of kind of getting sucked up the offensive line. I feel like Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire do sometimes. So I think in a perfect world, I mean, Jaden Harrell knows the system. Jaden Montgomery knows the system. Yes, they've struggled, but I think they're the safer bet. I think Jaden's a safer bet right now because
which Jaden?
Jaden Harrell. I think Jaden Harrell is the safer bet right now, but he just doesn't give you what Jay Higgins gave you. And I'm not breaking any news there, but I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and they were saying well, wouldn't you think that Preston Reese would make a lot of sense there? Yes, I mean, from the ability to Reese, LeVar Woods mentioned it yesterday, teams have already started to game plan away from Reese on special teams. I think from a pure going up against the run, Reese would be great. The ability to kind of just get off blockers and just blow guys up and at the point of attack. But I don't know if I trust him. He's a really boomer bust guy. That's why I think this Iowa defense is that's why I think Phil Parker has blitzed so much in the last couple of weeks too, is just because this defense isn't strong enough at the prevent and what they usually play, the prevent defense of keeping everything in front of them. For this defense to really be effective, they got to get to the quarterback. They got to really, rush the passer, get in the backfield. And I just think, that normal prevent stuff isn't, what's working for them this year. And that's okay, but we saw what happened in the last play or the last scoring play for Indiana. Or, I mean, the safety wasn't a scoring play, but you get what I mean. The touchdown, touchdown. They have to be able to, and I think being a little weaker at the middle linebacker position, really all the linebacker positions is definitely something that's held this defense back. And I just don't know if you have someone that you really want to change. Like Phil Parker seemed optimistic yesterday that, okay, we kind of expected these learning curves a bit, but our position, that position has been so good the last couple of years that it's like, that's what's really frustrating about it, because their secondary has been, I think the secondary has been fine outside of that first half of the Rutgers game. But the fact that they're having to make so many plays against the run is a little bit worrisome to me. And I don't think guys like Xavier Wampa is like a great enough tackler, to consistently be going up against the run. I think Xavier's played better this year than he did last year, but I don't think he's like, you want your middle linebackers, your linebackers to be the ones that are racking up the tackles. And, to me, that doesn't really feel like they're getting as much chances or as much opportunity or ability to engage as much as they, should be this year. Let me look. I'm sorry, I muted myself on accident. Let me look at the team. Do you have the team tackling stats in front of you?
I don't.
All right, so I got it. Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire, they got 32, 29 tackles. Zach Lutmer has 28. Cohen Enchinger has 26. Last year, Jay Higgins had 124. Nick Jackson had 92. Quinn Schulte was third best with 62. Like, that gap should be that gap should be similar to last year. And I didn't think that defense was like elite by any means last year, but you had linebackers that covered up a lot of holes with some of the issues that the secondary had. And the fact that maybe I'm overthinking it, but the fact that those safeties have so many more like the gap is that close is a little bit concerning to me.
You said those numbers, and part of me went, ooh.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to look like that. Those numbers are not supposed to look like that, and Phil Parker knows that. The problem is it isn't a quick fix. Like throwing Jaden Montgomery in there or Landon Van Keekerix doesn't fix all your problems as much as some folks would like it to. Or Cam Buffington or Derek Weiskopf or Preston Reese. With Preston Reese, you mentioned the boomer bust. If it's just blitzing, if that's, just go in there and blitz, like for sure, send Preston Reese in there. He's not your future Mike. Cam Buffington is your future Mike. Regarding putting them in there in general, like just saying, hey, we're going to roll with these three young guys. And talking to somebody behind the scenes, some folks behind the scenes, what that does, and having your more veteran guys, they've seen more, whether it is in practice or on the field. They just have. They've seen more. They've experienced more. They've been, received a pop quiz from Seth Wallace. What do we do here? Here's how we do this. The young guys haven't done that. And that playmaking that we've seen on special teams kickoff from Preston Reese slows down quite a bit when you put them in a situation that they're not familiar with. The defense or the offense starts showing some exotic things that you haven't seen before. That quick play, that big explosive hit is negated by, a 30-yard pass over the middle for a touchdown that maybe could have been prevented by somebody who has a little bit of that experience. So, unfortunately, there's not a quick fix for the Iowa defense in the middle. Is there on the outside with Deshaun Lee being replaced by Jalen Watson? I don't think so either. Deshaun Lee is limited by his physical capabilities, but Jalen Watson is of a similar ilk in terms of their physical size. What Jalen Watson has as an edge is the fact that he's played receiver before, And I think he has a little bit more of the underwear Olympics stuff that Deshaun Lee doesn't have. He's faster. He's more athletic. Maybe he can make some plays in that regard, but you're also going to get the mistakes of a young DB. So to me, it's frustrating from a fan perspective, but for all the times that we've heard Kirk Ferentz say, oh, like Spencer Petras gives them the best chance to win, I think Deshaun Lee and Jaden Harrell give you the best chance to win.
Right. And I mean, it's not like the defense has been bad. Like outside that Rutgers first half, I think the expectation for Iowa's defense is just like, okay, these guys need to be elite, like constantly. Like the bend don't break, mentality has been, has worked for this Iowa team. But also it just seems to me that there's margin for error, like not margin for error. Like it just feels like a lot boom or bust with, just how much they're blitzing. And that's because maybe Phil doesn't think that, like I said, like they don't want to be in prevent as much. Like they can't really do their normal, defense. Like they got to send the pressure and, send guys. I'm interested to see how that kind of, I would imagine they do that against Wisconsin a good deal to get pressure on Danny O'Neal or whoever the quarterback is, if it's Billy Edwards, if he's back. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy that, we talk about this defense like the way we have, and like they've really done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Like outside the Rutgers first half, like this defense has been really very good. But it just doesn't, like it feels like there's some cracks in it that, could eventually be exposed if they go up against a team like with an absolute sicko in Dan Lanning who just knows how to scheme up. And USC too. Like they play some pretty good passing teams. I mean, Michigan State's had a really nice, start to the season, the passing offense. That's kind of been their big thing. Nebraska's been solid. I know people kind of called Dylan Raiola a check down merchant, but they have some pretty good skill guys. USC, said them. You have Oregon coming up. Like they're good. Like
Devontae Roth already cooked you once. Now he's on Penn State's roster.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State hasn't had the best start to the year with the passing offense, but if they can figure it out, like they're dangerous as well. Like Minnesota yes, it was against Rutgers, but Drake Lindsey just threw for 3 touchdowns and kind of carved up Rutgers secondary. So you play some teams who have like potential with throwing the football, throwing it around a little bit. So that worries me kind of. But also the fact that you did what you did against Indiana was a little bit refreshing to see that. It's like to see that it wasn't just a fluke. And this unit's pretty good, but it does feel like from a scheme standpoint, it's a little, boomer bust. And that's what you get with blitzing. That's what you get with sending a number of guys. And like we said, this defense hasn't been bad. Like it's been pretty good, but I feel like it's a little more volatile than you would like it to be.
And the guys that have been particularly good, TJ Hall doesn't have an interception. Cohen Entringer missed tackles. Like Zach Lutmer has gotten beat on a few routes, even though he's played pretty well for the most part. Like Bryce Hawthorne hasn't been, we heard a lot of really good things. And even talking to Kelvin Bell at Big Ten Media Days, like what has Bryce Hawthorne done so far this season? Max Llewellyn and Ethan Hurkett have been really good. Max Llewellyn in particular has been really good. Like, again, going back, like Monday Morning Quarterback has really shined some light on some things for me. And going and rewatching these games and replaying things and making sure I don't miss anything, which rewatching on Peacock sucks ass, by the way. That was terrible. YouTube TV is much better for rewatching these games like this. But anyway, there are deficiencies. This isn't a perfect defense. It's never been perfect, but it's been really freaking good. And now Phil Parker is been challenged to figure out how to make it the best it can possibly be with the personnel he has at this time. We'll see, man. Like when we start getting towards down to the end of the season, that's when, the possibility of these younger guys starting to come in, I think will become much more of a reality. You know that I love Jalen Watson. At the same time, like having Shaheed Barros be hurt right now sucks for him, but it also, because like the likelihood of him seeing the field, especially in a starting role at this moment is much lower than what I thought. Yeah, much lower to zero compared to what I thought it would be. I thought he was going to be the starter opposite of TJ Hall, and physically he probably should be. He's just not there, and that's hurting Iowa.
Well, I mean, look at John Nestor now at Minnesota. He's been having a he had that really good game against Northwestern State, but I think he's Minnesota's third highest. He's got 3 pass pickups, 2 picks, third highest defensive graded player on Pro Football Focus. And, obviously he would have added more depth, but, that Michigan State game, I mean, I won't go into it too much, but like he was hurt. He was hurt in that Michigan State game. And I think if he doesn't play there, he probably stays at Iowa, or it's a different situation. Yeah. Like I said, there's just like so many what ifs.
Yep. I guess if we're talking about anything else before we wrap up, I don't know that we need to hit on special teams. Like, it's pretty self-explanatory, the technical issues. The ball was facing left. Drew just straight up missed that Rutgers kick to the right. Talked about kicking the ball in a different spot against UMass. There was on that ball that got tipped, I feel the need to bring this up. That ball that got tipped against Indiana and only went like 29 yards, 32 yards. I am frankly kind of shocked that Hayden Large hasn't gotten like reamed by the fan, because if that got blocked, like full on blocked, I don't know what he was doing. This looked like somebody who hadn't been in that position before. It was bad, Sean, like, I'm serious. If you have Peacock, go back and see if you can find it, because he is in that second level of defending the punter. And as these guys are coming at him, he looks down at the ground and spreads his arms out like this. Like his eyes aren't up. And to me, it's like, is this JV football? What is that? What are you doing? And it didn't prove to be a critical point in the game, but like that just flat out across the board cannot happen. That's the only thing I really feel the need to talk about on special teams right now. But that was one of the worst things I've seen in doing Monday morning quarterback. I don't know what his thought process was. He was looking at the ground and his arms were out like this. So I would suggest going back and seeing if you can find that, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm not much of a special teams expert.
Doc, neither am I. But like, I know you're not supposed to block guys like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, LeVar Wood's still expressing confidence in Drew Stevens. I mean, what else did you expect him to really say? I mean, it was good to see that Dakin. It was good to see that Dakin had a nice performance against Indiana. LeVar said that was probably one of his better ones that he's had. Yeah, I mean, special teams, you just got to clean it up, especially, going forward, games against Wisconsin, Nebraska, like those games even Michigan State potentially, like those games are going to be tight. Like with the way Iowa plays football, like I don't think there's one thing about this Iowa offense like it was last year where, you could see them running the ball and scoring 40 points. Like they're not going to do that this year unless they do, but I don't think so. Like those games are going to be tight. Like from here on out, like it's going to be you have to take advantage of the scoring chances when you get them, especially if Mark, is indefinitely or whatever his status is. Like you have to be able to fix that stuff. And I think that's one of the things, like going into the season, the question marks we had with this team, like they're being pretty, like they're being put into the spotlight. I think the passing game's taken a big step forward. Of course, Mark Gronowski gets hurt as that happens. Running backs, you're so excited about the depth. Of course, a couple guys get hurt. Wide
Who are the
receiver,
two most productive running backs on the roster
yeah,
at that point?
yeah. Wide receiver, Reese Vanderzee goes down. Like, I don't think the unit has been bad, but I think obviously the drop passes are a little bit of concern. Tight end, you lose your top guy. Offensive line, I think, has been good. Defensive line, you mentioned them earlier. I think that first four has been a really good group in pass rush.
Yeah.
Linebackers, question marks there. Secondary has been fine, but teams have kind of poked at Deshaun Lee a little bit.
But TJ
So
Hall has been really good. Like
yeah, TJ's
everything
been
we heard in the
fantastic.
offseason, was super accurate. He's got to get a pick or two, but he's been really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Lutmer in that first half against Rutgers was not good, but I thought he had a pretty good bounce back game last week against Indiana for the most part. Special teams, I mean, I figured it's how are they going to respond without Luke Elkin? And, it's a very, it's not all the new snappers, but there's definitely a difference there. So yeah, it just feels like all our question marks have kind of come to fruition a little bit with this team.
We can make this last thing quick. If not including getting healthy, because that's obvious, but like if there is one or two things that you think this team really needs to clean up or can clean up maybe in the next 2 weeks prior to Wisconsin, what would they be and how does that happen?
I mean, obviously tackling's number one on defense.
Yeah.
I think getting healthy at the running back position, that's going to be really important. Like, I think that is yes, Reese Vanderzee coming back is going to be huge because you don't really have that. Like Dayton Howard's, I feel like Dayton Howard's pretty good, but it was interesting to hear Lester say yesterday that Sam Phillips has been working more in that X receiver spot than Dayton Howard has. So it'd be nice to have, maybe Sam more at the Y or the Z or whatever they call it, the slot. And then, you have Reese kind of on his own island there as kind of that X receiver, wherever they kind of line him up and having a bigger target there. So really getting healthy is huge. And of course, like the kiss of death from what Kirk said in fall, he's like, yeah, we've been pretty healthy for the most part. He's kicking himself about that comment.
Yep.
I mean, so tackling would be number one, obviously injuries, but I think really for injuries, like obviously you have Mark, like, yes, you want him back. Like that's priority number one, but I think it's really important that you get the running game. Like you got to get healthy at running back. That to me is priority, like a huge, huge one for me.
Get Hank Brown ready.
Yeah.
That's and I think Tim Lester made it abundantly clear that is going to be priority number one for him over the next week, 2 weeks. Other than like you said, get Mark Gronowski healthy. Man, figure something out with Jaden Harrell and why he is not permanently or perpetually, but frequently taking a step or two forward to the right, and it turns out being an outside zone to the left. You know what I mean? Like get him in the film room. There's got to be a come to Jesus meeting in some way, shape, or form in this regard, because if he is going to be the Mike, like if he is going to continue to be the guy for this defense, he has got to cut that crap out. It can't keep happening. And that's it for me. Again, ton on McKenna Velitsko on Hawkeye Insider from Dave. Obviously, Sean's got a little bit there too. And of course, we're going to have basketball buzz coming up here from the first week of practice from men's basketball. And going to be talking to people behind the scenes as football continues to progress towards Wisconsin next week. Bye week this weekend. So enjoy watching other teams. Does Wisconsin play this week? They play Michigan?
They play Michigan at the Big House.
Oh, boy. All right. So they're going to take a beating before they play Iowa.
It'll be interesting because Wisconsin's running defense has been very good to start the year, and Michigan likes to put the ball on the ground a bit with the Alabama transfer Justice Haynes. So I don't think Wisconsin's offense will have anything to keep up with Michigan, but that battle is going to be really interesting. It makes it another interesting storyline going into the game in Madison, not this week but next week.
It does. All right, stay tuned in, stay locked in with us at Hawkeye Insider. We'll have you covered over the next 2 weeks. We'll get you plenty of content on all three major sports for the Hawkeyes. So again, stay tuned with us. Elliot Clough, Sean Bach here for Hawkeye Insider and Swarmcast. We will see you next time.